right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to talk to you about natural gas vehicles and share some insider tips on how to get its costs down and improve uptime. Today's webinar is the first of the two-part series for natural gas fleets and anyone wanting to learn more about how to properly maintain their vehicles that run on compressed natural gas. In this roundtable style webinar, we are going to provide you with an overview of the Clean Cities program. And then we'll introduce you to our moderator today, John Gonzalez with the National Renewable Energy Lab, who will lead a discussion on natural gas vehicle maintenance with our panelists. And afterwards, clean fuels, and he will take you through an introduction about Louisiana clean fuels and clean cities. And then we will move to a moderated panel discussion after you meet all of our panelists. So take it away, Tyler.
Good morning, everybody. As Ann mentioned, I'm a co-coordinator for Louisiana Clean Fuels. And we're going to go through, want to go to the next slide, Ann? Yeah, and introduce everybody real briefly. And then we'll go a little bit of background about Louisiana Clean Fuels. I'm sure most of you all are fairly familiar. And then we'll get to the individual presentations. So you can see us all there. You can see most of us on the side. We have John Gonzales, a senior engineer at NREL, and he's been working with CNG for a very, very long time and knows a ton about that. Dwayne Nelson, who's also worked with CNG for a very long time. He's now fleet maintenance manager at Republic Services. And then we have Patrick Campbell, who is regional sales manager with Cummins Westport, and he will go a little bit on the engine side and give you a little bit of background about the engines themselves and some of the technology that Cummins is working on and giving that, or Cummins Westport's working on and giving some of that sort of background as well. You can go to the next slide, Ann. So a little bit of the background of Clean Cities. Back in the 1988, the Alternative Motor Fuels Act came around. And that, as well as the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, spawned the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which, if you haven't used it, is a wonderful, wonderful resource about pretty much everything you can possibly hope to learn about alternative fuels. And then later, the EPACT policy, or Energy Policy Act, came around, and that spawned Clean Cities. And we have kind of two major goals: is to reduce emissions from on-road vehicles, as well as reduce petroleum imports. And we do that by by promoting and kind of helping with technical assistance on alternative fuel vehicles. So there are around 100 coalitions across the country, and each one is led by a coordinator, such as Ann or myself. And with its kind of separate territories, we all get to deal with things kind of in the way that's specific to our region, because every state and every region has different needs and different technologies that work for them. And so that allows for a very individualized sort of approach for the given territory. But there's a lot of crossover between us. So we all work together very well, and that gives us a wonderful national network of coalitions that can feed on each other's expertise and knowledge, as well as being able to still be kind of narrowly specified to our region. You can go to the next slide, Ann. So the priorities of Clean Cities coalitions under the Department of Energy are national security, so that's just being fuel independent and being energy independent. Affordability for business and customers. You know, a lot of the alternative fuels end up being cheaper for the customers, and a lot of the technology improvements that we work on make it cheaper for individuals and fleets to operate their vehicles. Economic growth kind of comes with the territory. Alternative fuels are domestic fuels, and so that helps everybody whenever we invest in them. And then reliability and resiliency. A lot of that just comes from doing it and getting case studies and learning more about the fuels and what they can and can't do. And all that can kind of feed into making a more reliable and more resilient network of fuels. And having more fuels than just relying on a single one or a single two also allows us to have redundancy and different redundancy. So you can go to the next slide, please. So how do we fit within the DOE? So the Department of Energy has under it the Vehicle Technologies Office, And that has these 5 different segments: electrification, advanced combustion and systems and fuels, materials technology, energy efficient mobility systems, and in technology integration. And under technology integration is where Clean Cities fits. So we're a DOE program focused on, like I said, focusing on technology integration, actually getting these vehicles sort of on the road and actually in consumers' hands. Yes, thank you. And so we deal with kind of everything: light, medium, heavy duty vehicles all across the market. Energy efficient mobility systems technologies is focusing kind of on how do these things fit together in one network and make an actually good, robust marketplace and technology suite that we can all kind of benefit from. And then, you know, we work with all the alternative fuels as well. So we don't just specify on natural gas or electric or anything like that. We work on kind of all 6 that you see laid out there. Next slide. And then I always like to focus on this one just a little bit. We don't specifically deal with greenhouse gas emissions all the time, but it's important to kind of look at that. And back in 2017, we had a pretty big deal happen in the United States where transportation overtook electricity generation as the largest greenhouse gas source in the country. And that's a huge deal, because since the dawn of electricity generation, that's been the biggest greenhouse gas emitter. And transportation has been steadily kind of increasing from an increase in transportation, but also electricity generation is becoming more efficient. And so this gives us a really good kind of vantage point in Clean Cities, where we're experts on transportation. And so kind of balls in our court now. We get to focus on that. And the stat there, in 2018 alone, Clean Cities reduced petroleum usage in America by 1.1 billion gallons. And that's a huge number. And that, of course, has associated greenhouse gas benefits as well. So you can go to the next slide. About LCF ourselves, so that's our territory there on the left. We cover 57 parishes. We've been a member, or we've been a designated Clean Cities Coalition since 2000. So this is our 20th anniversary, which is great. And yeah, so we were first just a few parishes in the greater Baton Rouge area, and then we spread to cover the entire state. And we have our sister coalition. That little notch in the New Orleans area is covered by the Southeast Louisiana Clean Fuel Partnership. And so they're kind of our sister coalition. We work together quite a bit to cover the entire state. You can go to the next slide, Ann. A couple of our kind of programs that we work with. We have a green fleet certification, which we launched a couple of years ago to recognize fleets who are doing particularly well with reducing their emissions and focusing on alternative fuels, which is awesome. And then we also give some feedback to the fleets, telling them, hey, here are some vehicles, maybe even specific vehicles that you can focus on, as in this particular VIN number truck is, could be replaced by this sort of thing, or you can shift stuff around. So we give actual direct feedback, which is lovely. Outreach and education is kind of the bread and butter of Clean Cities. We host webinars, workshops, conferences, and just try to get the information out there, because information is not valuable unless people actually have it. First responder training and funding assistance are both just other things that we work on. Help with facilitating grants or finding good or making good applications for grants. And then also just training the first responders so that they understand how to deal with alternative fuels if there's a fire or any sort of other problem with a vehicle. So we help with all that sort of stuff as well. Next slide. And then just so that we have all the names there, this is our territory. I kind of mentioned it before, so we won't dwell on it. We cover a lot of the state, a lot of ground. Go ahead, Ed. And then so now I want to introduce John Gonzalez, who will be our first speaker and today's moderator for the Q&A portion. John is a project leader at NREL, and they work to advance the use of affordable domestic transportation fuels and technologies for the U.S. Department of Energy's Vehicle Technologies Office. So that's, again, the level above us, or 2 levels above us, specifically focusing on the integration program and in Clean Cities. So he's been working with Clean Cities for ages, and he is absolutely a go-to person whenever I have questions, as he maybe takes aspirin because of. So go-to guy for CNG, he's been working it for a long time, and I think he'll talk a little bit more about NREL and his work.
Tyler, thank you for that introduction. I was explaining to the group yesterday that first slide that I had up there with the windmills. If most people think about NREL as the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, it's thought about from a solar and wind standpoint. But we do more than that at NREL. And the group that I'm part of that technology integration that Tyler spoke about in the Clean Cities, is we are an information resource. And really, we are here to support the different clean cities around the country, and like we are right now for Louisiana Clean Fuels. So that's what we do. As far as what I do, I manage what we call technical support program called Tiger Teams. It has been an ongoing program since the early 2000s. We really ramped it up after the Recovery Act happened in 2008. There were some challenges that we went through there, but also we have found it as a great resource for fleets to help them work through maybe challenges they had and didn't understand that there were resources that could help them through that. So we do that through Tiger Teams, and I manage that program. We also manage what we call the Natural Gas Vehicle Technology Forum. That's been going on since 2010. We do that for the Department of Energy, and it's held annually in partnership with the South Coast Air Quality Management District. Usually people just refer to it as AQMD out of California. Also CEC, which is the California Energy Commission. They're a big partner with us. And also NGV America. They are one of our team members that help us pull that agenda together. And really an agenda that is R&D focused. It is not sales focused. It's really, how do we find what are the barriers in the marketplace? How do we address those? And how do we find future funding opportunities that can go towards individuals or organizations that are trying to reduce those barriers to bring these technologies forward. So we've had some pretty good outcomes. I know Patrick's going to talk about the Cummins work that they're doing. A lot of that work was helped through some of these projects for the original near zero engine on the 8.9, and then the development work on the 12-liter and also the 6.7. We helped with that. We also do CEC, their ongoing work. California Energy Commission is very strong. I know it's a different part of the country, but California drives a lot of the emission technology that happens around this country. So CEC puts a lot of money towards that to try to clean up the air shed in California. And really that's why South Coast Air Quality Management District comes into play there in the LA Basin, which is one of the worst air sheds in the country. We also have some OEM updates. What are they doing? And then also natural gas in-use testing. We do a lot of that work, bringing these vehicles to market. They have what they call alpha, beta, and then what we have in production. We work in all those phases, but primarily in that beta to the production side. Right now, we're also managing a DOE funded opportunity with 8 different entities. It's about $133 million total for 8 different projects that are developing natural gas, not only on the vehicle side, but on the station side, on the fuel gauge side, things like that. So we're working in a lot of atmosphere regarding natural gas, and also catalyst efficiency. There's another part of it. So we're doing a lot of that work on natural gas and how do we advance that. We also support the National Fire Protection Agency, CSA Codes and Standards, which a lot of people say is Canadian Standards Association based out of Ohio, and then International Fire Code with their codes and standards, helping to make the process of streamlining these codes. So when you want to bring natural gas vehicles into your fleet, it's a streamlined code that when code officials look at that, they can really tell an easy way to help you bring that in, and you can talk to them on an efficient basis. We now received a brand new heavy duty natural gas test engine at our test cell here in Colorado to do some natural gas work. And then another piece, which is really where a lot of this information for today comes from, is an ongoing listening sessions that we are doing with the Department of Energy to really gain greater understanding from you, the fleets. What are your challenges and how do we address those challenges moving forward through what we call FOAs, or funding opportunity announcements. So that's a big piece of what we do. Gather that information. We are once again an information resource to try to help you make your projects work smoother, because that's our goal. Next slide, please. A few of the things that we've done on the vehicle side, we do have a natural gas vehicle facility maintenance guide that we put together several years back. It's still very relevant. Codes haven't changed a whole lot, so a lot of what's in there is still valuable. It is really designed for the fleet managers that's wanting to bring natural gas into their fleet, and how do you talk to code officials so they understand really what this is all about, because believe it or not, it is still new to some. And this helps you understand that, and it also helps you be able to inform the code officials on that moving forward. We put that together. And then the final thing I have here is what we call temperature animation. Because natural gas, when you compress it into a tank, I think many people on this call know that that gas heats up. And when it heats up, that gas expands. And when that gas expands, it can affect how your fuel gauge looks. So then the driver experience can change. So what we did is we put this animation together that really hadn't been put together throughout the country since the industry started. And it was to help show that and explain how that works, how what they call heat of compression works within a natural gas cylinder. These are just a couple of examples of things that we have on the Alternative Fuels Data Center. Tyler talked about that earlier. Once again, we are an information resource, and we take input from folks like yourselves to create this information and to make it better.
Thank you, John. And next, I will introduce our next speaker, who will be Patrick Campbell. Spoke a little bit about him earlier, but he is the regional sales manager for Cummins Westport joint venture with responsibility for natural gas engine sales in the South and Gulf Coast regions in the on-highway, truck, and transit bus markets. So he'll give a little overview of the Cummins Westport product portfolio and talk about some of the best practices from the OEM side. So Patrick, take it away.
Very good. Thanks, Tyler. And thanks for the invite, and good to be with you. So just a couple things on my role. Tyler mentioned I'm in the South and Gulf regions. My territory basically goes from Texas east to the coast, as far north as Northern Virginia. And I work with, there's 4 of us actually in North America, and we work with the 200 or so account executives that work for the engine company selling diesel and natural gas. And we sort of help, we're functional excellence leaders. We help with organizations like the Clean Fuels Louisiana and others. And we basically are the subject matter experts when it comes to gas. Next slide, please. So Cummins Westport is a joint venture between Cummins Inc. and Westport Innovations. So Cummins Inc., it's been around since 2001. Cummins is the largest independent engine builder in the world. We build engines from 2.8 liters up to 95 liters, mostly known for diesel, but of course there's natural gas, and then we have some alternative fuel technology coming online, batteries and hydrogen, et cetera. Westport Innovations out of Vancouver, BC. They have their own separate portfolio of products. A lot of it is light duty stuff. They have a HPDI system for heavy duty. They're global. They sell in China and Europe and so forth. So they're a substantial company in their own right. The portfolio of products for Cummins Westport is 6 liters to 12 liters. The engines are certified to run on CNG, LNG, and RNG. The engine's no difference in the engine. It's all the same. It goes into the engine as compressed. And for those who don't know, RNG is renewable natural gas. So that's basically biomethane from landfills and wastewater treatment plants, et cetera. So it's a pretty popular buzzword right now in the marketplace. The engines are manufactured by Cummins. And on the next slide, I'll show you where they're built. But all the parts and service, warranty, training, service network, et cetera, is through Cummins. Cummins Inc. has 200 certified branch locations. And then, of course, we have the OEM dealer locations. On highway, there are about 3,500. Not quite sure the breakdown, how many of them are certified to work on natural gas. But if they sell a natural gas vehicle, then generally they're certified to work on the product. So it's a pretty substantial footprint. We have about 90,000 engines in service. The vast majority of them are in the United States and Canada. Have some overseas business, but it's not quite as large as here. And then the joint venture will be coming to an end at the end of next year. And this is a topic that comes up quite a bit. And everybody's like, so what happens after the JV is over? And to the customer, really nothing happens. It's all the product is built by Cummins. The intellectual property is owned by Cummins. It'll basically, we'll part ways with Westport. They'll move on to, supporting their own products. And Cummins will take the whole portfolio in-house as just another red engine in our portfolio, so to speak. So next slide, Ann. So this is the product lineup. Like I said, we do 6 liter to 12 liters. So we have a B67, an L9N, and an ISX12N. For those who have been around a while and have known our products, we've made some nomenclature changes a couple years ago. We used to have the G as the suffix at the end of the name. We've gotten rid of that because we sort of have a corporate branding culture, and the N designates natural gas, and the G could in the future designate gasoline. So we decided to make that change. Product range from B67 from 200 to 240 horsepower, all the way up to the 12 liter 320 to 400 horsepower. You can see the torque ranges, etc. These are all near zero engines. So there's a typo in the B67 as a 0.1. These are all 0.02 gram engines. The EPA certification level is 0.2, so we're about 90% cleaner than our diesel counterparts. So that's a big deal, especially in California or anywhere where there's sustainability goals and alternate fuel type funding and so forth. So next slide, please. Okay, so some of the applications that we work in, on the top row from left to right, that's obviously a Freightliner tractor, transit bus next to it, a low cab forward garbage truck, and then of course a school bus. And on the next row, we have some of our major customers. UPS, they have about 5,000 Cummins Westport products. Waste Management in the neighborhood of 12,000 and growing. Both of those fleets are still continuing to buy CWI. Then we have a bulk hauler. We do pretty well with bulk haulers. And then you have a turnpike double from FedEx. So lots of applications. Basically anything that goes from point to point and has an opportunity to refill overnight is right in our wheelhouse. And then finally in the bottom row, you have a terminal tractor or a yard jockey. We do pretty well there, as well as that concrete mixer. Just the point to make about that is we have fleets that are awarded government contracts for road building, et cetera, that are able to use a sustainability provision to get contracts. So big fleet in Chicago, Zynga, CMEX is looking at some concrete mixers for California. So it's a growing part of our business. Next slide, Ann. So I want to talk about a little bit about oil. It's a big topic. So we have 3 standards, and in reality, we just have 2. I mean, the CES 20074 is for the old style engines, the lean burn engines. Most of those engines are mature in life. They run a different type of combustion cycle so that they run on the CES 20074. The CES 20085 to the left of it is obsolete. That was the standard Cummins Westport spec oil. There's been an improvement in the marketplace. The CES 20092 is the newest oil. It is significantly better, and in effect, it doubles our oil drain intervals. So we'll get into the specifics on it, but if you look to the right, there's a picture of the Valvoline 1 solution, and that's Cummins has a relationship with Valvoline, that's why I mentioned it. But that oil is available for diesel and natural gas. So if you have a mixed fleet, you can use that oil for both platforms. There are other brands of oil that meet the spec, and they are listed in Cummins Quick Serve Online. So you can do if you had an engine serial number, you could go into Quick Serve and you can find out which brands have the CES 20092. So next slide, Ann. So oil level checks, this probably seems very self-explanatory, but you wouldn't believe how many times we have to do an investigation on why units seem to be using oil. And a lot of times it's based on drivers putting too much oil. So a lot of times they'll pull in the fuel and they'll check the oil right away. And it doesn't give enough time for the oil to drain back into the oil pan. We recommend a minimum of 15 minutes, but you're better off waiting 20 to 30 minutes to check the oil. Make sure the dipstick's inserted, the whole way, and so forth. And we can't, emphasize this enough. Never fill or add oil if it's anywhere between the full and the add mark. Only add oil if it's below and it's in the add section. We've had a lot of oil consumption. The engine will burn the oil off, and fleets become quite upset with us because they think we have an oil consumption issue. In reality, it's just they're adding too much oil to the engine. So, next slide, please. So, oil consumption. One of the big reasons we have it is obviously overfilling your crankcase. But another reason is because oil drain intervals sometimes are missed. And I'll get into the specifics on that, but it's a big deal for us because these engines are very sensitive to oil drain intervals. And so we went to 1,000 hours or 50,000 miles, for instance, on the 12 liter. But the way you have to think about it is what's the average speed of the engine or the truck, excuse me. So, if you're an over the road truck and you average speed is 50 miles an hour times 1,000, you're at 50,000. However, if your average speed is 18 miles an hour for a refuse truck or a bus, then your drain is around 18,000. So there's quite a bit of difference. And if you go over, these engines are very susceptible to issues with precious metals inside the engine, wear out, premature wear out, oil leaks, etc. So we just wanted to make sure that that's reiterated that, make sure you're changing your oil on time. So it's a conversation that we have with fleets all the time. So I just wanted to make sure that was very clear. Next slide, please. So this is a quick chart basically of the different, on the left-hand side, the different components of the engine, and then the hours and the part numbers for the maintenance. And so, you can see spark plugs for the B67 is, 750 hours, 1,500 for the L9, and 1,000 hours for the 12 liter. People ask why is it less for the 6.7? And the quick reason, the engine runs at a faster RPM, so it gets more sparks, so it needs to be replaced more frequently. So, so anyway, that's there for I'm sure this will be in the after the follow-up material. If anybody has any questions and they want to reach out to me, we can discuss that offline about their maintenance and so forth. So next slide, please. So spark plugs, another issue. We've had fleets that have had misfires and so forth, and maintaining your spark plugs is very important. And we have the different hour meter for the spark plugs. Can't reiterate enough to use Cummins genuine spark plugs. We've done all the testing, and we've got a lot of brand X spark plugs trying to get into the business, saying their spark plugs are as good. We found that not to be the case. And so we just want to make sure that everyone realizes that your best bet is to use genuine. The spark plug is actually part of the emissions formula. So if there's potential that you could be outside the emissions rule, so to speak, by using brand X or JPO parts for your engine. The other thing is these spark plugs come pre-gapped. So we think it's really important for you not to touch them, just to install them out of the box. If something seems wrong, then you can return it and get a replacement. Next slide. There you go. And if you're going to check the gap, don't use the ones you would use for your Briggs & Stratton. Use the pin wire gauge like it's shown there on the bottom left. And once again, please consider using genuine plugs. I think that's it on that. Next slide. Oh, that's just a copy. So the spark plug. So another thing about for maintenance, please do your maintenance based on hours. I reiterate, you know, the way to calculate it, if you have Insight software, which is the Cummins diagnostic program that you plug into the engine to get all your, you know, fault codes or fuel economy numbers, et cetera, it'll tell you your average vehicle speed, and then that should basically be a way to back into the number on your maintenance intervals. Spark plug and oil changes should be performed on time, not wait until you're having fault codes, because you'll have some unplanned downtime. Idle time is very negative. That's why we recommend hours versus miles. These engines really don't like to idle much, and which degrades the oil even quicker. So we recommend keeping idle time to a minimum. Genuine Cummins parts, we recommend always to go with the genuine channel. The CS 9200, the 8500 is probably not even available in the marketplace anymore, but we just want to make sure that you're making sure you're using the right oil. Finally, every other maintenance interval, you should probably make sure that you have the latest ECM calibration. Cummins is always making updates and changes, and that information is available online with the Insight software. So make sure that you have the latest and greatest, and if you can download it to the ECM about every other maintenance interval. And then finally, on fuel filters, if you can, we recommend draining them. And if there's an issue with the compressor station where you're getting your fuel, it's something to keep an eye on. But we recommend it every day if you can to check the level of your fuel filters. That might be it. Oh, nope. Okay, here's finally here's some things to keep an eye out for, and it's basically a tell that you're not quite getting the job done with maintenance. Misfires on spark plugs. If one starts to misfire, it's probably time to change all 6. It can cause rough running, fault codes, low power. It can even cause degradation of the catalyst downstream, which is a big ticket item. So we recommend changing those on time. Changing your oil on time. You could have issues with main and rear and main seals coking up or leaking. We've come to the conclusion that we really don't have a oil seal issue. We have people not changing their oil on time, which causes this failure to happen prematurely. And also pistons overheating, especially on the 12 liter. Sometimes we have coking, and which causes pistons to overheat, and we have premature failures. So any of these issues, please revisit what your maintenance is. Like I said in the beginning of the presentation, we have probably 200 account executives in the field. So if your local person isn't calling on you, or you may have questions locally, connect with me, and we'll make sure that you get the right person on a local level to come in and review your maintenance practices, and hopefully we can get everything squared away. So I think that's it. Oh, this is just sort of an appendix of the different hour meters, but it's the same as before. So I think we're good. Yep. All right. I think that's it, Tyler.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Patrick. Sure. And we'll get to a couple of the questions later on during the actual Q&A portion. So everybody just be a little patient there. And you can go to the next slide, please. So I want to give a little bit of background about Republic Services and their work with LCF. Then I'll introduce Dwayne, and we'll get into the Q&A after that. So Republic's been working with LCF for a very long time. They've been operating CNG vehicles for ages and have tons of experience with it. And we've had a really good partnership with them so far, and it's been lovely. So they've been a direct member, a dues paying member, since 2016. They were in our beta test of the Green Fleets program whenever we were first starting to get that off the ground. And they, maybe not surprisingly, became a 5-star fleet under that. They're one of the general managers at Republic Services. Calvin Ray has been a board member for longer than I've been around. And he provides some fantastic information for us. And it's just a really strong partnership. And then in 2019, they were recognized as LCS Clean Fuel Champion because their work just in our territory alone was responsible for mitigating 19,000 tons of greenhouse gases only in 2018 in the previous year's annual report. And that's because they're using CNG vehicles, and they have very aggressive route optimization programs and idle reduction, and that really adds up. So next, we're going to have Dwayne speak just a little bit about his background. And as his bio, he started as an entry-level technician, worked his way to project lead and design coordinator for Kenworth and Peterbilt. He's been working on natural gas since the beginning with Westport Innovations and Cummins, and also helped design some of the old engines as well. And not surprisingly, Republic scooped him up, and he's been working as maintenance manager there. So very long history with that, and I think you might speak a little bit more about that as well. So Dwayne, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it, and thank you everybody for inviting us over to participate in this. So as Tyler stated, I've had a long history when I worked with Kenworth and Peterbilt, both with the early stages of natural gas, which intrigued me, was very exciting, and I wanted to keep moving forward with my progression and learning into this. Since then, I've stayed with the dealerships. I've moved across the country, starting first in California and then moving out to Texas and helping build some of the repair facilities for Kenworth and Peterbilt on a natural gas side. Based off of that, it was actually my introduction to Republic Services. So Republic Services had actually reached out and wanted to test the waters on converting from diesel over to natural gas with their existing fleet. In doing so, at the same time, they were actually implementing their natural gas fleet in the state of Texas. Based off of that, I started managing their fleet as one of the mobile techs. And then I turned around and actually became employed with the Republic Services team over into their MRF or recycling facility, and then later merged into the hauling. Since then, I've been able to work my way through managing South Houston and now helping support the area team as managing the entire state of Texas. And actually, Calvin was a huge part of bringing me back out to Texas with Republic Services, so hats off to him. That's a little bit of my history with the fleet right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Dwayne. And there's the wonderful headshot of him, if you can't see him on the side. So now we're going to move into some of the Q&A. And I wanted to start off with just one of the questions from the audience, which is whether or not the slides will be available afterwards. This is being recorded, so we'll have a recording that's available for people to watch, so you can learn about it that way. But Patrick, Dwayne, well, Dwayne, you don't really have any slides there. Patrick and John, do y'all have, is it fine to send the slides up to the attendees?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, no problem.
Sure is.
Oh,
Awesome.
fantastic. Just real quick, little housekeeping. Make sure if you have questions for the panelists to enter it into the Q&A, not into the chat. And after John has his facilitated discussion with the panel, we will get to as many of your questions as we can. Back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Ann. So I think we'll pitch it off to John to ask a couple of the questions initially, and then we'll get to some of the Q&A questions that have been submitted as well.
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, I would like to just kind of go back and forth between Patrick and Dwayne, if I can, just on a few things. I know, starting with you, Patrick, you talked about engine hours versus mileage, and I know you went into that. I run into many fleets that talk about, well, I go so many miles, and it seems like my maintenance isn't where it needs to be, but then they have no idea about the hours piece. How do you deal with that, and how do you work with customers that way?
Yeah, so what we do is we make sure that they have access to Insight software and that they can go in and read the ECM, so they know, they get a snapshot of what their truck is doing on. I mean, they should have that software just for keeping track of fault codes and mileage, fuel economy, and so forth. In that Insight image, as we call it, there's the average the miles, per hour that the truck or bus, whatever drives, and so. If their average speed is 18 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour, then you multiply by 1,000 hours or whatever the number is per the engine, and that's where you're at. If you're going to track by mileage, then you need to know what your average is. And so the engine will give you that information. You just have to go get it. Maybe your telematics provider provide the same thing. It would be reading the same data that we provide. So that's it. You really, it basically incorporates idle time. And so it basically says, here's what the number is. So
Are you finding that hours is a better way to track maintenance than miles then?
for gas engines, for sure. Diesel is a little more forgiving. In fact, it's either or, and we've always said that, but it never really became a real big issue in the diesel world, but in the gas world it is. And so we've done some deep dive investigations as to why some of these engines aren't performing as well as they should maintenance wise. And that was the key finding, is that they have to use miles or hours to track their maintenance as opposed to hours, because it backs out that idle time number and gives you a true snapshot of what the truck and the engine is doing.
Great. Yeah, I've heard that as well through the listening sessions we've had. That's been a confusion. A lot of people are used to miles. They need to really start looking at that hours piece as well. So Dwayne, a little bit about you and speccing a vehicle. How do you go about doing that? Making sure you have the right amount of tanks on board and so your range and for your drive cycle. How do you go about doing that in your fleet?
So Republic actually does things on an annual basis, an annual inspection. We'll actually get with our OEM manufacturers, our engine manufacturers, and then also our area fleet and equipment maintenance managers will come together as a spec committee. And we actually, as a whole, we go back through and dissect where our fleets are at, what are our average route miles and hours needed to reach that full route capability. And then also we'll turn around and spec a truck to the standard in that area or region. Here in Texas, we used to spec it for individual locations. So this specific site would go this amount of distance or this amount of hours, equating out to the distance. And we would then move the truck to another location, and it couldn't keep up. So we've kind of standardized out the way we spec the truck for the largest route.
Okay. And that's really kind of through committee almost, finding out how it works in different areas to make sure you're putting the right piece of equipment where it needs to be.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Hey, Patrick, a little bit about that OEM part issue, spark plugs, coils, things like that. Can you go a little bit more in depth on that from the issues that you've seen when you see customers that don't use the OEM part, and as far as when you go back to that hours piece, how does that look for longevity with those parts and some of the challenges that you might see through that?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of testing on the OEM parts, the first fit, and we're pretty confident that we're buying. Obviously Cummins doesn't make spark plugs or coils. We source that, but we're using the best material, the best sourcing that we can, and for the longest customer satisfaction, longevity, durability, etc. So we stand by it, and it's part of the emissions. It's how we certify the engine, is to have a certain amount of durability and meet emissions. And when you use what we call JPO parts, but we just can't vouch for it that it'll last as long as it should. I mean, we've seen issues, and we've tested some of those parts, and they don't hold up as well as the ones that we recommend. So it's kind of like you take your buyer beware, so to speak. So all we can do is tell customers to use genuine. Truth be told, the spark plugs are not cheap, and there's probably $50 a piece. And when you're talking 6 of them, it's a lot of money, but it's better off using the right ones. You'll get better performance, better, reliability, durability, and driver satisfaction. So we recommend highly to stick with genuine channel.
Can you also talk about the installation? I mean, you hear people talking about use only a certain spark plug socket to install those, use gloves to make sure you're not getting any oils from your fingers on those. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of outside of my wheelhouse a bit. I'm more on the sales side, but yeah, I mean, it's all explained very well in Quick Serve Online what to do, and I recommend highly to stick with the procedures that are spelled out in that. So yeah, we used to say that Cummins, the diesels and natural gas, they're kind of the same. They're really not. The natural gas is a different animal, and you have to be very specific on how you maintain it and how you operate it and so forth. So we've really we're out in the field every day talking to customers. Make sure you follow the procedures as laid out in Quick Serve Online or the training that you've taken. So
great. Hey, Dwayne, one of the things that comes up with users is tank inspections. How do you guys do that? Do you have folks that are trained in-house to do that? I suspect you're large enough to do that. Have you used outside sources in areas that might not have training? How does that work for you?
So we do both. So we partner with a lot of our third-party entities like Louisiana Clean Fleets and NGVI, Texas Railroad Commission. We partner with a lot of these individual companies to help train our staff. Obviously, in these tough times, we've reached out for alternative solutions on the training side. But we push for our sites to train our staffs for multiple reasons. One, we want them to be very safe and comfortable with the equipment and know how to work on it. And kind of to Patrick's point, we breathe and we just breathe, follow the OEM specifications and the recommended repair guidelines. For those sites that don't have, don't have the capability or the access to train their staff, we then reach out to our third-party partners, like our Kenworths, our Peterbilts, our Max. We'll reach out to them and have them perform our inspections as well. So it's really a combination of both.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that's important. That's important, making sure that you catch any damage that might have occurred during a route that you didn't expect to happen. So that's,
exactly.
Yep. Dwayne or Patrick, I'm not here to beat you up at all on this next question, but I just want to bring it forward because it does come up in a lot of our discussions. It's the aluminum versus steel piston, the upgrade. And can you talk a little bit about that and the reasons some of that has happened, and how in some cases that you haven't had to change the aluminum pistons if things are going right as well?
Yeah, so obviously 80% of the base engine comes from the diesel side of the family, and we've had no issues over there with aluminum pistons. So we've just, when the ISLG first came out, we had aluminum pistons. We found through trial and error that they just don't hold up in high load applications, so refuse trucks, etc. And we had thermal fatiguing and failures, and it was just a really bad situation. Some customers, transit, that have low duty cycles, we've actually seen no issues. It's kind of strange, but anyway, we made the decision in was it February 2017 to switch the whole fleet over to steel, and so that went first fit production, and all the service parts coming out of our PDCs for any repairs were steel, and so that's been going on since 2017, and we've actually had no fatigue, thermal fatigue, or failures on the steel pistons since. I mean, it just has not happened. Now, we have had some issues where pistons have failed, but we've basically tracked that back to the piston cooling nozzle and a manufacturing snafu where the plant broke it or bent it or what have you, and it wasn't caught before it left the factory. So we've had those failures, but the core design of the steel piston has been spot on, and we've had no failures with it since, from a fatigue or thermal event type failure. So it was ugly. We're over the major hump of it for the most part. Don't even know if you could get an aluminum piston if you tried from us. I think they're out of the system. So we've kind of moved on, and things are, the ISLG, the L9N, is performing quite well in the field right now. So
great, good information to know. Yeah, it's been asked if the current model product and how long it's been that the steel piston's been out, and others that have talked about when they do in frames, if those are what's going to be stock. So it sounds like that is good to hear. Good to hear. Dwayne, talking about the training of your technicians in-house, how do you do that? Is that ongoing? You talked about third-party folks you use. How does that kind of work for you guys?
So actually, training is always an ongoing for public services. We have a multiple variety of training available. First, our corporate office actually built a training platform for all mechanics for anything from OEM chassis to engine manufacturer. And each technician that comes on board with our company actually has access to this training, and it tracks it. Now I can tell you from managing multiple CNG sites with our company, each of our technicians, sometimes we've fallen behind, right? We are oblivious to what was available or what was out there. In recent pushes, we've re-energized and brought it back up and worked with our partners to say, hey guys, this is out there, this is available. Me personally, with one of my sites, we actually used perfect example was Cummins Quickser, and we got them signed up. We got them in their training, and we're able to track it and get them certified so that we can then build up and send them to the actual course. This works twofold because A, your technician feels happy and valued that you're actually sending them through, getting them training, and then certifying them on the product. But B, the real meat and potatoes of it is now I have a trained technician who's able to work on my product, who knows what the OEM standard is and knows what great looks like, and is able to help cascade and teach the next generation of mechanics coming in.
Great, great. Hey, Tyler, I'm going to turn it over to you if there's any questions from the audience. I know with respect to everybody's time, there's about 5 minutes left. So I've got plenty of questions, but I want to let the folks out there, if they have any, that we can bring forward.
Yeah, so a couple of the questions that have come in. I know, Patrick, you already addressed a couple of them. But this is for you, Patrick. Eric Pollard is in Oklahoma, is one of the other Clean Cities coordinators. He asked who I'm sorry, this is for Dwayne.
Okay.
Sorry for misspeaking. Asked who he should contact at Republic about CNG deployment in Oklahoma. He said that there is funding available and rebates over the next year, and is interested in getting some CNG.
So I know Oklahoma's gone through a lot of changes here in the last year. So the easiest way is reaching out to the area fleet and equipment maintenance manager for Oklahoma. I want to say that's area 6, I believe. The specific individual's name, I don't know. You can reach out to me and I can actually provide you with that offline. Otherwise, if you can't get a hold of that gentleman, the purchasing agent over at our corporate office, that would be Nelson De Leon. He would be able to help out with that as well.
So we'll make sure to make that connection after this is all over with. Then thank you for that. And Patrick, this one is actually for you. From the Cummins standpoint, what does a 2021 forecast look like for natural gas engines, and maybe even past 2021? Target markets, target numbers, kind of target emissions. Just kind of where do you see the growth going for natural gas, especially in kind of today's world?
Yeah, so I don't have the actual numbers for the whole of North America, but anecdotally, we've seen some pretty decent orders come through for UPS. There's Amazon's looking at some units, so things are actually going okay, price or numbers wise. Obviously, we're competing with other alternate fuels, EV and hydrogen. So we're actually competing with our own divisions at Cummins, which is interesting. There's some other stuff with gasoline. There's a lot of things happening in the alternate fuel space, but we're holding our own. It doesn't happen. It doesn't matter specifically to the North American market, but we're starting to see some LNG opportunities for Cummins Westport in South America and the Caribbean islands. They have a lot of LNG down there. So, I mean, that really wouldn't impact this group, but it does me. So we're busy. And COVID we took a good punch with COVID, but we're actually getting busier and busier. So, we'll just have to see how COVID goes, and, social distancing, and truck sales seem to be rebounding, and we're part of that. So I wish I had more numbers for you, Susan, but maybe I can find them for you and we can have a discussion offline. But we're doing okay. It feels good a little bit. So
awesome. Thank you, Pat. And then I think the last kind of question from our end, at least at the moment, unless anybody has any other ones, is for smaller fleets, or maybe in like rural areas where there isn't a very close by Cummins distributor or dealership that they can deal with Cummins that has natural gas engines. Is there any sort of any path that you'd recommend, Patrick, for them continuing to get OEM parts and getting that sort of support when maybe it's not quite so common in those areas? Are there people that they should reach out to or find to make sure that they can keep their natural gas fleet going?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should start with the truck salesperson that they bought the equipment from, right? So if that dealer is selling CWI engines, then they should be CWI certified to work on them. And most of the dealers are, and they do a pretty good job with it. So that would be the first place to start. If you need to reach out to a Cummins person, there's 200 or so of us in the field. we can make that happen. Some are calling on dealers, some are calling on fleets, but yeah, that would be the first place I start, would be the truck OEM salesperson.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yep.
And Anne and the rest of the panel, I don't know if we want to continue. We're at time now, but I know we did have more questions. So if people did want to stick around, I'd certainly be available to continue this discussion.
John and panelists, do any of y'all have any final parting words or advice for some of these natural gas fleet operators before we move into the last two slides?
I'd just say that, you know, we appreciate the opportunity to present. You know, if there's any questions offline, please, you know, we'll make the connection somehow, and I can help answer them, or I can get you connected with a local Cummins person. But, you know, I just want to reiterate and thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this with you today.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for Ann and Tyler for pulling this together, but also Dwayne and Patrick for your time. It was great to have you, and great to have you as a resource for everybody that's here attending. I'm sure they appreciate it.
We appreciate it as well. So thank you guys.
Okay, so this is the time where we pitch the next webinar. So if you liked how this worked out and you want some more information, or maybe you have some issues with fueling that you want to discuss with some fueling experts, next Wednesday, same time, different link, we have another webinar, the same format, where we'll be discussing fueling. We'll have Angie and clean energy. And is there anyone else that's going to be on? John Gonzalez again, who will be moderating once again. And,
Yeah, that'll be those will be the representations that we have, and we'll do basically this exact same format. So come with your questions.
Yeah, and we'll put the link in the chat. So if one of y'all could pop that link in the chat for the webinar, so y'all can register for next week's. All right, well, thank you so much for everyone for taking time out of your day to watch yet probably another webinar or another Zoom call. We are very much looking forward to being with each of you in person again one day, so we can continue to host workshops like this to help you all with your fleet implementations, either whether it's new vehicles or trying to help keep your current ones operating in top shape. So, you know, keep in touch with us. We will be sending out the links to the recording and the slides later on. Any final questions? Awesome.
I just want to say thank you all for presenting and being a resource. It's really valuable to have both OEM and boots on the ground support for these sorts of things. So really appreciate it, and hopefully people have, you know, maybe some follow-up questions or make some connections afterwards. It'll be useful for people. And thank you, John, as always.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.